Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Itamar. It is Motzei Shabbat. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get a lesson out yesterday on Friday because I came down with some kind of bug. Whatever it was, I was too out of it. I'm feeling well. But anyway, I just got a second wind here after the Shabbat inspiration to give a little Torah. So I do hope that I will have my strength to say what I want to say. But anyway, we can't go a week without having some kind of lesson. This week's portion begins a series of 5 different portions that talk about the building of the tabernacle. And of course, there are so many intricate details describing the tabernacle. A lot of us, we get to these portions again, we say to ourselves, wow, why does the Torah go into so much detail describing the tabernacle? We know, of course, that there are so many esoteric teachings in Judaism about describing what each thing represents and what it means. And in Kabbalah, there's just so much that refers to the different details of what they're referring to in spiritual realms. But the Torah is meant to be understood on every level. As we know, Pshat, Remez, Drash, V'Sod, on the 4 basic levels. And we have to ask ourselves on the regular simple Pshat, meaning what will the Torah, why is it so important for the Torah, to go into detail, so much detail on a temporary structure of a tabernacle, again, in the desert, until finally we reach the building of the temple in Solomon's time, which was our final destination of reaching that tremendous spiritual height of having the temple built in Jerusalem. So it's a question that I'd like to get to in the coming weeks. If we don't get to it today, is because we're now going to go to a series of temple talk, a series of lessons on discussing the tabernacle. And there's just so much here we can discuss. There's so many details here. But I want to focus today as an introduction to the whole conversation, the whole lesson about the tabernacle, about sort of examining the process, the interesting evolution that the tabernacle went through until it finally reached its stage as a temple in Jerusalem. If we know that there are 4 major, the cosmos, we talk about being divided into 4 major parts, the simple inanimate world of, for example, a stone, and then you go to another level, the plant world, and then you have the animal kingdom, and then you have something, what's above an animal is a human being, right? The 4 basic levels. If we think about it, the tabernacle really had all 3 levels. Well, not going to take the human being out of the picture. To build a tabernacle, we had to use the 3 different levels of the cosmos. How was it so? For example, inanimate objects like stones were used in the temple, in the tabernacle. We had to use the plant from the plant world to build the different wooden boards and lumber that was used to build the tabernacle. And finally, from the animal world, the skins were used as a covering, as the rooftop of the tabernacle. So we see in the tabernacle you had all 3. In Shiloh, we made our way to Shiloh finally, and then got to Israel, which the tabernacle stood 369 years there. It looked a little different, the tabernacles. We know we didn't have the coverings of the animals. So it only had really the inanimate and the plant world, but it was missing the animal kingdom. I'm not talking about, again, things that were used for sacrifice. That's something else. Talking about the actual building that went in to build the temple. And then finally, we reached King Solomon's temple, which was already our final destination to reach the holy Temple Mount in Jerusalem and the holiest place on earth. So they were really the stage. At that point, it was only from inanimate. We don't see really walls made out of. The walls were no longer made out of wood. We surely didn't have any ceilings of animal skins. We just had really stone. It was a stone structure. So the question is, why? What was the spiritual meaning behind this? From moving from a structure that had the 3 parts of the animal world, of the cosmos, the 3 divisions, into 1 division. And on one level, I'd say really as an introduction to mention is that as human beings, Hashem wants so much for us to educate ourselves to see God within this world, And when you think about it, when a person looks at this world and he sees animals running around, and a person who knows to study biology, he knows that the intricate details of studying the way the habitats, the way the animals live, of course, human biology, a person can really see how the greatness, that's the amazing greatness behind, of course, the animal kingdom. You can actually see how they have life, the miracle. It's much easier to recognize a creator by looking at the animal world. And then, of course, the plant world is so involved and amazing in the details how the plant world exists. And of course, someone who studies in detail again realizes how great the Creator. But obviously, the more we get further away from the life force, the things that seem almost inanimate, right? Like a rock, like wow, it takes someone who's really into physics and really knows what the atomic structure behind holding that rock together and what's behind it, behind those the particles that make up that atomic structure, right? And obviously, we finally reached out the great stage of building our temple in Jerusalem. It only had the inanimate, because God was saying we have to eventually educate ourselves to look at the most inanimate thing and realize that there's life force, there's a godly force in everything in this universe that exists, and even the inanimate. And that's one message, one of the many, many kind of messages we can get, understanding that change, interesting change, we finally reached the temple, number one. We look at the word of this week's portion, it's called Terumah. What does Terumah mean? The Zohar Kadosh says the word Terumah is built upon one word saying Torah. If you take the letters, it spells Torah, and then the letter Mem, which is 40. As we all know, the Torah, as we know, was given Moshe Rabbeinu 40 days on Mount Sinai. Mem also could represent the Beit Mikdash. The word for temple is Mikdash. Obviously, it's within the word Terumah itself, the hint. But of course, the interesting comparison, we just finished receiving Torah. We read about that in the portion of Yitro, about receiving Torah on Mount Sinai. And here we're getting now to the tabernacle. What is it? How do we connect the two things, the receiving Torah on Sinai, to the building of the tabernacle? And this is hinted again, the word Terumah, Torah 40. The whole concept of the tabernacle itself is really like it's maintaining the amazing spiritual experience that took place on Mount Sinai, replicating that experience to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle, which is a constant place of divine presence. And that's really what the Ramban, Nachmanides says. If you look at the portion, the Ramban describes in the beginning of this week's portion, he comes out and saying, like this, and I'll read what he's saying. He's saying, V'sod HaMishkan, in the secret behind the tabernacle, Sheyeh HaKavod HaSheshachan Al HaSinai, Shochein Alav B'nistar. Right, that same kavod, that same divine presence that came upon Mount Sinai, it would come upon the Mishkan. And he goes on and he develops this concept. And if we think about it, what we just spoke about before, seeing God's presence. The whole idea is in this world is we have to constantly try to be aware of the presence of God. We know the debates that we have, those of us who believe and are great believers in Hashem, against those, unfortunately, those who don't believe in God. And you constantly debate is, okay, you don't see God. How do you know God exists? Where is God in this world? The beauty of course, the event of giving Torah on Sinai, which is an unbroken tradition, by the Jewish people, had that amazing experience of receiving Torah from Sinai, and from that, and then the entire nation of Israel reached a level of prophecy. This was an event which passed down from father to son, from an unbreakable chain until this very day that I'm standing here telling you Torah now. Say, Moshe, how do you know there's God in this world? And how do you know there was a Sinai event? I can say, well, my father told me. And how did my father know? His father told him. So it's an unbreakable chain, goes all the way back to Sinai itself. And this, again, is the most powerful godly experience that was brought down to this world. And that is the strongest proof for anyone can have in this world of knowing that God exists and knowing that the event of Torah took place, a giving of Torah took place in this world. God, the beauty of the gift that Hashem gave to us was He allowed, by setting up the tabernacle and allowing us to have this mitzvah, this commandment of building the tabernacle, it was to try to replicate that experience on Sinai. That was an experience that the Jewish people experienced, to bring it into a temple and have actually a place on this world that not only the people of Israel, but the entire world that want to come and visit and connect themselves to God through the people of Israel, through our temple, through the Jewish temple, would be an option. So God is actually saying, I want to allow this experience to go on forever. Of course, through the Jewish people, as being those who were commanded to be a light to the nations. But we're going to build a temple which is going to bring a blessing to the entire world, and through that temple, the entire world can actually experience and feel the existence of God in this world if they don't want to believe in God. So that was the whole concept, the whole idea of a temple in this world, of God allowing us to have, giving us the commandment of making the tabernacle. And of course, we finally built a temple in Jerusalem in Solomon's days. That was a center of prophecy. It was a center for the world. As we all know, people came to visit Solomon from all over the place, right? As we read about. The idea was to have the divine presence shine and radiate from that mountain. And this would bring, of course, people to faith and to want to serve Hashem and to serve the Creator. Now today, unfortunately, the situation of exile, that we were 2,000 years expelled from the land, and the whole world thought that was over for the Jewish people, right? We were banished. There's no more, the Jews have lost it, right? People that gave up hope in the Jewish people. Of course, we never gave hope in ourselves as the Jewish people. The prophets have always promised us that we'll return, and we returned to the land, and now here we're living in the land of Israel. And of course, we're waiting for the next stage of building our temple. We have a lot to do before we get to that final stage. But of course, we will get to that stage again, building our third temple. And again, God's presence will shine and radiate from the mountain on Jerusalem. So I want to bless us all with that great blessing. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and let this message of the third temple start to ring in the ears of the entire world, that we have to build a temple. As it says in the Talmud, if the nations of the world knew how much this temple would mean for them, not only for us as the Jewish people, but how much for the nations of the world would bring them a blessing, they tomorrow would come here and they help us build it, put the temple up, and start rebuilding our third temple. So anyway, I want to bless you all with a wonderful, wonderful week. Tomorrow is going to be the Fogel Memorial, and I'll tell you about that, of course, next week. So anyone who's going to be here in town, let them come and pay tribute, and come and visit Itamar tomorrow. We're going to have a special memorial service, and please come and join us. So anyway, have a wonderful week, and good news and good tidings for all of us. Bye-bye.